In terms of field goal percentage, players who just dominate around the basket for the most part, who are you turning to for that category?
The discussion starts with Zion Williamson, right? Who essentially lapped the field in this category last season. When you look at fantasy value, in 8-cat roto leagues, derived from field goal percentage, he was by far number one in the league in that category. 61.1% from the field last season. He does almost all of his work around the basket. Obviously, his lackluster free throw percentage doesn't really factor into this at all. So that's not a major concern. I mean, with Zion, it kind of depends, I guess. If you're probably taking him maybe early, middle, you're going to pair him with whatever player you take in round one. Is probably not a guy who you're worried about free throw or field goal percentage wise. I guess maybe if you take like a Damian Lillard who has a great field goal percentage for his position, but overall, isn't all that great, kind of mid 40s. Maybe pairing him with Zion to shore up field goal percentage makes some sense.
Yeah, there are some other guys, who we mentioned as well. Rudy Gobert fits into the field goal percentage category. Robert Williams, Rashawn Holmes would have also fit into a category of a guy where you're getting blocks from him as well. Obviously, Giannis. But there are some names even farther down, like Ivica Zubac, who is probably going to be the Clippers starting center again. 63% from the field over the past 2 seasons. Even DeAndre Ayton last season, his field goal attempts went down, but that resulted in increased field goal percentage. So there are cases like that, around the league.
Yeah, and I would throw out 2 guys from Washington as well. I mean, Thomas Bryant is perennially, one of those guys who not only offers you, defensive stats and rebounds and some threes as well, but great field goal percentage. And then Daniel Gafford, who I think is going to start the year as this team starting center. Probably a guy we should have mentioned when we were discussing blocks as well. I mean, he was a monster at the end of the year last year when they finally unleashed him. I mean, he ended up admitting like, yeah, I wasn't in the greatest shape. Like he's really only playing like 17, 20 minutes a game. He still had multiple games with 4 or 5 blocks at the end of the year. So I don't know that Daniel Gafford is necessarily going to have a chance to take that starting job and run with it, because I think Thomas Bryant's going to have a really good shot to reclaim it once he's back. But those first few weeks of the season, when Thomas Bryant is still rehabbing, I think Daniel Gafford is a guy that I would love to have, especially in a 2-center league.
When you're looking for a high free throw percentage, which is something that not a lot of fantasy managers target. So if you're in a head-to-head league, you could be an advantage by getting guys who are great at free throw percentage. Who are you looking towards in that category?
I mean, Lillard, Trae Young, Curry, Beal, Harden, those guys. I mean, one thing we should make clear, it's all about volume too. I mean, you could go 50 for 50 from the line on the year, but if you're only taking like whatever that comes to, like 0.6 free throws per game, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's a combination of volume and efficiency. So those guys tend to be guards. They tend to be guys who shoot the 3 well. In addition to that, so those elite players certainly help you there. I mean, Joel Embiid was one of the top 5 free throw percentage contributors last season, and that doesn't even account for the positional scarcity of, there very few centers are even average free throw percentage contributors, let alone glaring positives in that regard. So that's one of the underrated aspects of Joel Embiid's fantasy profile.
That's the same reason I like to draft Karl Anthony Towns early. You get the good free throw percentage numbers, and from Towns, you also get a good amount of threes and some assists. Yeah, you mentioned Lillard and Curry. Both those guys are over 90% over the past like half decade. They're shooting over 5 attempts a game. Guys like DeRozan get to the free throw line. Kemba Walker has historically been a good free throw shooter, although I'm a little concerned at how much he'll actually be driving to the rim these days. And someone that I'm especially interested in is Fred VanVleet, who he's only taken 3.7 free throw attempts over the past 2 years, but 87%. And you figure this season, he's going to have to control the offense more than ever. They might ask him to be really aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, with VanVleet, he just takes so many threes. That the free throw rate has never been sky high. But yeah, if there was ever a time for that to come up, you would think this is the year. DeRozan is a really good one. 88% last year, took over 7 free throws per game. I do wonder if that number comes down a little bit, just joining a team where he's really not the number 1 option anymore. You would imagine that he's not getting to the line that often. I mean, the percentage seems very sustainable, but the impact might be a little bit lighter this year just because we expect that volume to go down. I mean, later in drafts, if you look at guys who really impact this category, Jeremy Grant, Bojan Bogdanovic in Utah, Danilo Gallinari was in like the top 25 guys who impacted free throw percentage positively last season. Very quietly, a 93% free throw shooter last year. That volume will probably gradually dwindle as he gets older. But if that's a category of need, that's a player that will most likely be available on waiver wires in a lot of leagues. So Danilo Gallinari is somebody to keep an eye out for there.